Oh, yeah. Well, coming to you live from WRUE in Tennessee, it's the Scribbling Woman.
I'm Nancy Rue, and you're a scribbling woman too. Welcome back to Women Creating Writerly Lives. If you're old enough to hearken back to 1969, you probably remember Three Dog Night singing, "One is the loneliest number that you'll ever do." If you've heard that song, you know the lyric because they repeat it 15 times. I counted. Well, the band was singing about a romantic breakup, but I think that line applies to the writerly life as well. I hear these kinds of things from writers all the time. I need a connection with other writers. I need people to celebrate the small stuff with, people who understand the struggles and the emotional toll that writing takes on us. That's a long way from the romanticized vision of the solitary writer in her garret, lost in her fictive world until she emerges glowing with manuscript in hand. Louisa May Alcott basically did that when she wrote Little Women, and she was not a happy woman. Lest we think that the loneliness we feel is unusual or somehow abnormal, brilliant naturalist and author Rachel Carson said, "Writing is a lonely occupation at best. The process is a lonesome place to be, even a little frightening." So see, there's nothing wrong with you. Ironically, we're not alone in feeling lonely. But just knowing that doesn't keep us from feeling isolated and, as Rachel Carson said, a little frightened. Today, let's look at the challenge of sometimes being a lonely writer and see what it has to teach us. First, let's clarify some terms, and you'll notice that I'm doing a lot more quoting than usual because I want you to know that I'm not just pulling this stuff out of the clouds. This concept is important enough to need some additional credibility. First term, loneliness, isn't just about being alone. It's a lack of connection. And indie authors feel this deeply because there isn't the built-in community of a traditional publishing where you have an editor, several editors, and marketing people. We may have a lot of friends and family around us, but they may not get what it is to be a writer. That's loneliness. Isolation, on the other hand, has the feel of being cut off from something. Irish writer Brendan Francis Behan is famous for saying, "At the innermost core of all loneliness is a deep and powerful yearning with one's lost self." And just a disclaimer, I heard this on an episode of Death in Paradise. Who says TV is not educational? This is why a writer can feel isolated in a whole room full of people. Finally, solitude is an aloneness of our own choosing. It's the necessary quiet and space without human distraction so we can ponder and express ourselves on the page. Belgian-American poet and novelist May Sarton wrote that the richness of self is the quality of solitude. We need this as writers. John Steinbeck assured us all great and precious things are lonely. It's when solitude becomes loneliness or isolation that we run into trouble, and here's why. According to George Orwell, the most terrible loneliness is not the kind that comes from being alone, but the kind that comes from being misunderstood. It can be a soul-deep ache. We writers need people who get that we don't just write to make money, that something as complex as a novel or a nonfiction book takes time, that we're not just typing, we're creating. So interruptions for tiny mundane things make us just a little bit cranky. We need people who get that rejection from outside sources doesn't mean we haven't got what it takes. That yes, we are weird, and that is a good and essential thing for the world. Writers do not need people who keep asking us if we're still working on that novel, who tell us about successful authors in that tone of voice that says, this isn't you, who try to make us feel guilty when we would rather hang out at Starbucks with a writing friend and write than hang out with them doing essentially nothing. We do not need people who ask how the book's going and zone out after about 15 seconds of us telling him how it's going. We need human support as much as we need a good computer and a decent editor. Encouragement is as vital as inspiration, ideas, and the skills of the craft. You are not needy, neurotic, or a wannabe if you feel that need. It is real and meeting it is essential. So, how do we find that support? Let me start by saying this is especially difficult for introverts who can't imagine themselves going up to someone at a writer's conference, if they actually go to a writer's conference, and saying, I see from your name badge that you're from my neck of the woods. Should we meet for coffee sometime and talk about writing? But it's not hard just for introverts. Even we extroverts can find it to be a challenge because most communities don't have visible pockets of writers. They have to be ferreted out. And when we do find them, it can seem that established writers groups are kind of like closed clubs. You might have time to hang out at the local coffee shop for 2 hours at a time, but not every fellow writer does. You may be single, she may be married and have kids. If we do find another writer to meet with, they may love sharing their own work, but get a glazed look when you start talking about yours. And it isn't just regular meetups that we want. What about someone we can just text and say, could you just talk me out of the crazy tree right now? But everyone is so busy. But there are ways. These all require a little bit of courage, no matter what your social capacities. But what else is new? It takes courage to write a story you're not sure anybody else is going to read. You are already brave. You can do this. First, you can Google writers groups in your area. Research them. Chat with a member online. See how they like it. Maybe go to a meeting. It's worth a look. And if it doesn't work for you, you haven't failed. You just tried something. Don't be afraid to tell people you meet that you're a writer. Yeah, they might say, well, what have you published? So have your answer at the ready. I'm not published yet, but I am loving the writerly process. And you never know who's going to say, oh my gosh, me too. In that case, take a deep breath and say, should we exchange numbers? Maybe text? If you're really an introvert, rehearse that ahead of time. Be prepared. Recognize that your writing cohorts may be online. That's one of the benefits of the age that we live in. We have Zoom and Google Meet, all those face-to-face options for getting as close as possible to relationship, even thousands of miles apart. If you're cautious, you can find support on Discord or Facebook or Threads, as long as you scroll past people who get into politics or doom and gloom or snide remarks. This is another thing that you can Google. Check some out. See what feels like a good fit. You are welcome to give the Scribbling Women a try. We are a free online group dedicated to supporting each other in concrete ways through workshops on Zoom, a Facebook group, silent scribblings, get-togethers. If you're interested, simply contact me at nancyrue.com. Whatever way you find to connect with other writers, let it be give and take. We're there to encourage as well as to be encouraged. It's up to us to support as well as to receive support. And we don't have to limit ourselves to fellow writers. Simply supportive friends who may not get the writerly life, but they get us, can make a huge difference. Other creatives, visual artists, actors, musicians, understand the big artistic picture. We're all makers, and we can empathize and even kick one another's buns when necessary. It's vital, though, that we balance writerly community with the solitude that is essential to our art. How we balance that depends on our individual natures and needs. Because I'm an extrovert, I've had to learn to protect my morning swaths of creative time and save the interactions for the afternoons. When I first started my career as a full-time writer, I was a big old extrovert. I wasn't accustomed to so much alone time. So once a week at least, I wrote in a coffee shop or the library just to have external energy around me. Now I crave the space and the quiet, but I know the signs when I get restless for the company of other humans. Then I reach out. An introvert may have the opposite balancing challenge. Solitude is wonderful and satisfying until suddenly it isn't. You can do something about that. So, if solitude turns into loneliness and even isolation and it persists, it could be telling you something important. Remember what Brendan Behan said about the yearning for union with your lost self, and selves can be lost in too much community too. Perhaps ask yourself, what part of me have I unwittingly set aside? Your passion for justice or inclusivity, your love of poetry, the joy you find in nature, your whimsical side. Is this the time to explore that part of you, to draw her out, to reconnect? Maybe find out where the pain of injustice and exclusivity is erupting in your community. Take a poetry workshop, get outside, create a nature journal or notebook. Let yourself look under the caps of mushrooms to see if there's any fairies under there. You need to feel connected, even with yourself. If we become isolated, so cut off that we feel cut off in a crowd, we lose touch with our own essence. And we need to be able to touch that essence as writers. That's what we write from. And that essence is what makes us extraordinary. And sometimes we can only discover it when loneliness says, pay attention to me. If this is a lot to take in and you need to listen again, just know this for starters. We need to belong and we need to know what makes us unique. Community encourages, solitude allows us to create something worth encouraging. Again, if you crave the writerly company that we're talking about, please contact me through my website at nancyrue.com. We can interact one-on-one. We can see if the Scribbling Woman might be good for you. Also know that the Scribbling Woman Interactive Companion was created by a gathering of writers, so it's a writer's group in a book. Until next time, Scribblies, alone or in the society of other writers, scribble on.